was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, March the 2nd, 1943. My mother and father met during the Second World War, and I had a Southern father from Montgomery, Alabama. My mother's family was originally from Terre Haute, Indiana. So I'd spent a lot of time in the Deep South, going back and forth to New Mexico, to portions of the Deep South, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. My father was in charge of training for the glider program during the Second World War, and he later opened a drive-in restaurant in Montgomery, Alabama, so I was familiar with the 50s scene. He opened the drive-in restaurant in 1946, but it went on until the late 50s. He also had a stable of stock cars that he ran in southern Georgia and Alabama and Florida and racetracks, so I was familiar with hot rods and race cars. I had a natural propensity for art, and I was very successful in elementary and middle school, high school, and college, and arts, and everything else was a washout for me. So in my early teens, I proposed to be an artist, and in college I majored in art, and I moved to Southern California in 1963 to take formal art training, and I went to Los Angeles City College and Chenard's Art Institute, where I learned to draw and paint, and I was something of a realist, and this was not in vogue in the early 60s. Still isn't really in vogue in the fine arts world. It was a reflection of my influences of comic books and B-movies and girly magazines and hot rod magazines and a variety of subcultural pollution that I'd acquired like many other young people. So I got off to a bad start in formal art school because I was prepared to aggressively attack the art world with representational art, and found that I stood totally alone. And it was during the age of abstract expressionism, and pop art was just starting to get a foothold. Through the 70s and 80s, minimalism and conceptualism crept in and developed itself in the fine arts world. So there was never really a formal school of realism, with the exception of maybe some pop art that you might consider kind of an exploitive form of realism. I think just about the entire crew that was with EC and Mad Comics had an influence over me. Basil Wolverton, all the stuff that was outre or not very desirable in the fine arts world. We've just gone through about a 45-year period of people that see themselves as artistically inclined, but feel that they're above the menial level of actually learning how to draw and paint. So that's a stigma that I don't think we're really ever going to get rid of. I think that's with us from here on out, that people that have proficiency and dexterity and mental capability to represent crystal clear thoughts are going to be looked down as common illustrators. And during the late 70s and early 80s, when I got involved in punk rock art, showing at after-hours clubs, I got into this really brutal world of gratuitous sex and violence. It was so thrilling, because the artwork was designed to show at after-hours clubs, you know, when people were drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning or loaded, and so the work could have this really dashing, adventurous look to it, you know, and be antisocial and be piratic and daring, you know, and I mean, it was just a thrill to do that stuff. But eventually that market slid away, and I was getting older, and a lot of that stuff, if you weren't involved in that punk rock scene and you saw that work, it would just revile you. It would just make you sick. I got an enormous amount of criticism in feminists were on me all the time, and it was just, you know, but I had this following that really loved the work, and I loved the work too because it had so much energy. And it was just devil may care vulgarity. It was just wonderful. I just don't see that anymore, you know. And we've moved into a time now where young people are very, very complacent and very sensitive and caring and whiny and dependent on each other's feelings and their peer groups, judgments and whatnot. And wild spirit just isn't there, you know. It's just not there anymore. So I look back on the early work I did in that period, and I think, how did I ever have the guts to do something like that? You know, Jesus, what kind of environment could I have functioned in to be such bitchin' artwork? You know, tits and ass and open wounds and, you know, hot rods and pirates and flying saucers and people tearing the other people's heads off and spitting down their tracheas and just, you know, this great stuff, you know. And it was all so ridiculous that how could you really say it was violent, you know? It was just ridiculous. My paintings are loquacious. I actually talk too much in my paintings. I tell too much. There's just too much there in them. That's because graphically I get a big mouth, you know, and I'm just begging to talk. And I spend a lot of time on detail and shape and whatnot. And it's a tremendous form of gratification for me, and fortunately I make a living at it. I used to pump out 2.5 or 3 paintings a month in my 40s when I was really hitting my stride, but the detail wasn't there. The detail is so time consuming, and so it doesn't look like it, but it requires so much energy to tighten up and manicure the picture and clean it up and then put another coat on it. It's just really time consuming, and it's prohibitive to most people. It's just absolutely financially prohibitive, but I've been doing it long enough that I've gained enough of a reputation that I can make a financial return on it. And this is called Swap Meet Sally, and this thing is just pregnant with detail. This slick looking young gal has got all these choice items at a swap meet, and emanating off of all her sales items there is just this suggestion of worth. Everything is represented in worth. So, you know, we're living in a time where our money is inflating so quickly and so badly, and just the most common things, if you're a couple of years old, are worth money now, that people have no faith in money and they invest in junk. So that would be the expression on that. Now this has got a lot of stuff to do with quantum mechanics, of violating physics, see. And I've been really fascinated with going into the violation of our physical universe and expressing more dimensions and whatnot, and there is like a surrealist violation in it. You know, there's an emotional surrealist violation in it that borders on quantum mechanics. That would probably take about a month and a half. I'm the founder of a magazine called Juxtapose. It's got 70,000 circulation. It's the second biggest art magazine on the newsstands, and that you know, it's hard to ignore that. You know, that's so I guess you could euphemistically say my time has come, whatever that's worth. You know.